The courtroom smelled like old wood and fear. I sat there with my head in my hands, trying not to fall apart. My lawyer, Elias, squeezed my shoulder, but it didn't help. Across the room, my wife, ex-wife, Bianca, sat next to her fancy lawyer, smiling like she'd already won. And honestly, she had. Judge Holloway was shuffling his papers, about to read the verdict. I already knew what it said. I was about to lose everything. My business, my house, my reputation. Worst of all, I was about to lose my daughter. Bianca had convinced everyone I was a monster, an abuser, a narcissist who controlled her money and screamed at her every night. None of it was true, but she had evidence, bruises, audio recordings, even a so-called expert who said I had anger issues. The judge believed her. The whole courtroom believed her. I didn't blame them. She was good, really good. I looked at the empty seat where my 7-year-old daughter, Amara, should have been sitting. The court didn't allow her in because Bianca said I scared her. That lie hurt more than all the others combined. Judge Holloway cleared his throat. This was it. The end. And then I heard it. A small voice from the back of the courtroom. "Your Honor?" I turned around. My heart stopped. Amara was standing there, dirty sneakers, messy hair, holding her old cracked tablet in both hands. She looked terrified, but she didn't run. "Can I show you something? Something Daddy doesn't know about?" The room went silent. The judge frowned. "Young lady, this is a closed hearing." "Please?" Amara whispered. "It's important." Judge Holloway hesitated. Then he nodded. "Approach." Amara walked to the front. Her little hands were shaking as she plugged the tablet into the court screen. I didn't know what she had, but when the video started playing, Bianca's face went white. And I realized my daughter had just saved my life. But before we continue with the story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Also, drop a comment and let me know, what time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I love hearing from you all. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Let me tell you how this nightmare started.
6 months before that courtroom, I thought I had it all figured out. I woke up at 5 in the morning, like I always did. The house was still dark and quiet. I made my way downstairs, careful not to wake anyone, and started the coffee maker. While it brewed, I pulled out the eggs, flour, and blueberries. Pancakes, Amara's favorite. By the time the sun came up, I had a full breakfast ready. Pancakes stacked high, fresh coffee in the pot, orange juice in the glasses. I set the table like I was setting the stage, hoping maybe today would be different. Bianca came down at 7:30, already dressed like she was going to a photo shoot. Hair perfect, makeup flawless. She didn't even look at me. "Morning," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "I made coffee, the good beans you like." She walked past me, poured herself a cup, took one sip, and dumped the entire thing down the sink. "Too bitter," she muttered. She made herself a new cup using the expensive pod machine she bought last month. I stood there holding the spatula, watching her scroll through her phone like I wasn't even in the room. "I made pancakes," I said quietly. "I'm not hungry." She grabbed her purse and walked toward the door. I followed her. "Bianca, wait. Can we talk? Maybe tonight we could—" "I have Pilates, then lunch with Monica, then a salon appointment," she said without turning around. "I'll be home late." "Okay. I just thought maybe we could spend some time together. It's been a while since—" She spun around, and for the first time that morning, she actually looked at me. Her eyes were cold. "You want to spend time together? Then maybe you should have thought about that before you married your business, Darius." The door slammed behind her. I stood there in the hallway, my chest tight, wondering what I'd done wrong this time. "Daddy?" I turned around. Amara was sitting at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She'd heard everything.
"Hey, baby," I said, forcing a smile. "You're up early." She walked down slowly, her little face serious. "Is Mommy mad at you again?" "No, sweetheart. She's just busy." Amara didn't say anything. She just climbed into her chair and started eating the pancakes I'd made. I sat across from her, pretending everything was fine. While she ate, she pulled out her crayons and a piece of paper. She started drawing. I watched her little hands move across the page. A house, a sun, 2 stick figures standing in front of the door. "What are you drawing?" I asked. "Our house," she said. I looked closer. 1 stick figure was tall, 1 was small. Both were smiling. "Where's Mommy?" I asked gently. Amara didn't look up. She just kept coloring. "She's not home yet." My throat tightened. I reached across the table and squeezed her tiny hand. "You know I love you, right?" She nodded. "I love you too, Daddy." After I dropped her off at school, I sat in the car for a minute, staring at the steering wheel. I thought about Bianca's face this morning, the way she looked at me like I was nothing. It hadn't always been like this. I remembered our first date. She'd laughed at all my terrible jokes. She'd called me her diamond in the rough. She said I was the hardest working man she'd ever met, and that's what she loved about me. Now that same work ethic was the reason she couldn't stand me. I pulled out my phone and checked my calendar. The Henderson contract. If I could close that deal, we'd be set for the next 2 years. Maybe then I could take some time off. Maybe then she'd see how much I was doing for us. I started the car and headed to the office. If I just land this contract, I thought, she'll smile at me again. I didn't know it then, but I was wrong. She wasn't waiting for me to succeed. She was waiting for me to fall. 3 weeks later, everything fell apart. I was sitting in a diner near my office, celebrating. I'd just closed the Henderson contract, 2 years of security. I'd called Bianca 3 times to tell her the good news, but she didn't pick up. So I decided to grab lunch and surprise her with flowers on the way home. When the waitress brought the check, I handed her my card with a smile. She came back a minute later, looking apologetic. "I'm sorry, sir, it was declined." I laughed. "That's impossible. Try it again." She did. Same result. My stomach dropped. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app while she waited awkwardly. Maybe there was a fraud alert. Maybe the bank made a mistake. The screen loaded. Account balance, $0.00. I blinked. Refreshed the page. $0.00. My business account, my savings, the emergency fund, all of them, 0. "Sir," the waitress said quietly. I threw cash on the table and ran out the door. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. I kept checking the app at every red light, thinking it had to be a glitch, a hack, something. But deep down, I already knew. When I pulled into my driveway, there was a man standing on my porch. He wore a cheap suit and held a thick manila envelope. He looked uncomfortable, like he didn't want to be there. I got out of the car slowly. "Darius?" he asked, not meeting my eyes. "Yeah." He held out the envelope. "You've been served." I took it. My hands were numb. He turned and walked away quickly, like he was afraid I'd throw it at him. I tore it open right there on the porch. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Grounds: domestic abuse, financial control, emotional cruelty.
The words blurred together. I flipped through the pages. Restraining order, asset freeze, custody petition. Bianca was asking for everything. The house, the business, full custody of Amara. And then I saw it. A photograph. Bianca's arm covered in bruises. A recording. My voice shouting, "This is unacceptable." A statement from a Dr. Julian claiming I exhibited narcissistic rage and financial abuse. I didn't understand. None of this was real. The door opened behind me. Bianca stood there, arms crossed, looking at me like I was a stranger. "Bianca, what is this?" I held up the papers, my voice cracking. "What the hell is this?" She didn't flinch. She didn't even look sorry. "It's over, Darius." "Over? What are you talking about? We can fix this. Whatever's wrong, we can—" "There's nothing to fix." Her voice was ice. "I'm done." "But this—" I shook the papers. "These accusations, this isn't real. I never hurt you. I never—" "Didn't you?" She tilted her head, almost amused. "You controlled everything. The money, the decisions. You worked all the time and left me alone. That's abuse, Darius." "I was working for us, for you, for Amara. I gave you everything." She laughed, actually laughed. "I gave you a credit card and expected you to be grateful. You thought I'd just sit there forever, playing the perfect wife while you played businessman." She stepped closer, her eyes sharp. "You thought I'd stay grateful forever. I built this life too, Darius, and now I'm taking what's mine." I couldn't breathe. "Bianca, where's Amara?" "Somewhere safe, away from you." "You can't keep her from me. She's my daughter." "Not anymore." She smiled. "Read the restraining order. You're not allowed within 500 feet of her." My vision blurred. The porch tilted under my feet. I grabbed the railing to keep from falling. "Bianca, please," I whispered. "Don't do this. I love you. I love her. We can work this out." She looked at me for a long moment, then she stepped back inside. "You should have paid more attention." The door closed. I stood there on my own porch, holding the papers, my knees shaking. I sank down onto the steps, my head in my hands. My accounts were empty. My wife was gone. My daughter was taken. And I had no idea how any of it had happened.
I spent the next 2 days calling every lawyer I could find. The first 3 wouldn't even take my call once they heard Bianca's lawyer was handling her case, Attorney Varick. Apparently, he was famous, the kind of lawyer who didn't lose. The 4th lawyer agreed to meet with me. His office was downtown, all glass and marble. He listened to my story for 10 minutes, then slid a contract across his desk. "Retainer is $50,000, he said, plus hourly fees." I stared at the number. "My accounts are frozen. I don't have access to anything." He pulled the contract back. "Then I can't help you." The door closed behind me before I could even respond. I sat in my car in the parking garage and put my head on the steering wheel. I had no money, no access to my business. I was living off the cash in my wallet, and that was running out fast. I called my friend Marcus. He was the one who finally gave me a name. "Elias Thorne," Marcus said. "He's not fancy, but he's good, and he's cheap." "How cheap?" "Cheap enough that you can afford him." I didn't even ask what that meant. I just wrote down the address. The office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax prep place. The sign above the door was faded, "Elias Thorne, Family Law." I sat in the parking lot for a full 5 minutes, staring at it. This was what my life had come to. A strip mall lawyer because I couldn't afford anything better. I'd built a business from nothing, I'd provided for my family, and now I was here. I finally forced myself out of the car and walked inside. The office smelled like old paper and cheap coffee. There were boxes stacked against the walls, files everywhere, and a desk buried under paperwork. Behind it sat a man in his 50s, gray hair, sleeves rolled up, reading glasses perched on his nose. He looked up when I walked in. "You Darius?" I nodded. "Sit." I sat in the chair across from him. It creaked under my weight. He didn't offer me coffee or shake my hand. He just leaned back and studied me. "Marcus said you're in trouble." "Yeah." "Tell me." I told him everything. The divorce papers, the accusations, the frozen accounts, the restraining order keeping me from Amara. My voice cracked when I said her name. Elias listened without interrupting. When he finished, he was quiet for a long moment.
"You know what they're doing, right?" he finally said. "Destroying me." "Exactly." He leaned forward. "This isn't a divorce, Darius. This is a demolition. They're not looking for a settlement. They're looking to bury you so deep you never come back up." I swallowed hard. "Can you stop them?" He didn't answer right away. He pulled off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "I used to work at a big firm," he said quietly. "Downtown, corner office. I made a lot of money representing people like your wife. And you know what I learned?" He looked at me. "I learned that the system doesn't care about the truth. It cares about who tells the better story. And people like Bianca, they're very good at telling stories. So what do I do? You fight. But you need to know, it's going to be ugly. They're going to twist everything you've ever done, every late night at work, every time you said no to spending money. They'll make you look like a monster." "I'm not a monster." "I know." His voice softened. "I've seen men like you get destroyed by people like her. Good men, honest men. That's why I left the big firm. That's why I do this." I felt something break inside me. I looked down at my hands. "I can't afford much," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't afford anyone else." The shame of saying it out loud was almost too much. I'd always been the provider, the one who solved problems. Now I was begging for help. Elias was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "We'll figure it out." I looked up at him. "Why are you helping me?" He slid a contract across the desk. The retainer was a fraction of what the downtown lawyer wanted. "Because somebody has to." Elias spread the documents across his desk like he was laying out a crime scene. "This is what we're up against," he said. I leaned forward, trying to make sense of it all. There were financial statements, photographs, audio files, and a thick psychological report with my name on it. Elias picked up the first document, a spreadsheet. "They're claiming you hid assets from your wife." He pointed to a line highlighted in yellow. "Hidden asset account, $47,000, undisclosed to spouse." I stared at it. "That's not hidden. That's Amara's college fund." "I know that, you know that, but look how they framed it." He tapped the page. "They're saying you secretly moved money into an account Bianca didn't have access to. They're calling it financial abuse." My chest tightened. "I was saving for our daughter's education." "They don't care." Elias's voice was flat. "They're painting you as a man who controlled every dollar while your wife had no freedom. And to a judge who doesn't know you, this looks bad." He picked up another sheet. More highlighted lines. Restricted credit card spending, monitored bank transactions, required approval for purchases over $500. "I never restricted her," I said, my voice rising. "She had access to everything. I just asked her to let me know about big purchases so I could manage cash flow for the business." "Again, I believe you, but they've twisted it into control." He set the paper down. "Every responsible thing you did as a husband and a business owner, they've weaponized." He slid a folder toward me. "Now look at these." I opened it. Photographs. Bianca's arm, covered in dark purple bruises. Her shoulder.
her wrist. In every picture she looked terrified, vulnerable. I felt sick. I never touched her. I swear to God, I never— I know, Elias's voice was calm, but do you remember where those bruises came from? I stared at the photo of her arm, and then it hit me. I was back in our kitchen 3 months ago. Bianca had come home from the country club laughing, tossing her tennis bag on the counter. "You should have seen Monica's serve today," she'd said, rubbing her arm. "I tried to return it and completely whiffed, slammed my arm into the fence." She'd rolled up her sleeve to show me the bruise forming. She was still laughing. "Tennis is brutal today," she'd said. I looked up at Elias, my hands shaking. "She got that from tennis. She laughed about it. She showed it to me herself." "And now it's evidence of domestic violence." Elias closed the folder. "They took real injuries and built a narrative around them. And unless you have proof she got them another way, it's your word against hers." I felt the room spinning. Every good memory was being rewritten. Every moment I thought I understood was a lie. "There's more," Elias said quietly.
He pulled out his laptop and turned it toward me. An audio file was queued up. He hit play. My voice came through the speakers, loud and angry. "This is unacceptable! Do you hear me? Unacceptable!" The clip ended. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. That's not what it sounds like. I know. I wasn't yelling at her. I was on the phone with the contractor who missed the deadline. He cost me a client. I was furious, but I wasn't— "Darius," Elias stopped me. "They cut the context. All the judge is going to hear is you screaming, and combined with everything else, it's going to sound like rage." I put my head in my hands. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to flip the desk over. But I couldn't, because that's exactly what they wanted. "They've been planning this for months, haven't they?" I said quietly. "Maybe longer." I looked up at him. "How do I fight this?" Elias was silent for a moment. Then he closed the laptop. "We tell the truth, and we hope it's enough." But the way he said it, I could tell he didn't think it would be. "Elias told me not to leave the house. If you move out, they'll claim you abandoned the family," he said. "Stay put. Keep your head down. Don't give them ammunition." So I stayed. It was hell. Bianca moved into the guest room and acted like I didn't exist. She'd walk past me in the hallway without a word. She'd make herself dinner and eat in front of the TV while I sat alone in the kitchen. The restraining order meant I couldn't see Amara, except for supervised visits twice a week, and even those felt like torture. My own daughter, sitting across from me in a cold office while a social worker took notes. But the worst part was the dinner. It was a Friday night. I was in my study, going over documents with Elias on the phone, when I heard voices downstairs. Laughter. I hung up and walked to the top of the stairs. Bianca was in the kitchen with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, clean-cut, wearing an expensive sweater. She was pouring him a glass of wine from the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. "Darius," she called up, her voice sweet like honey. "Come down. I want you to meet someone." I walked down slowly, my jaw tight. The man extended his hand when I reached the bottom. "You must be Darius. I'm Dr. Julian. I've heard so much about you." I shook his hand. His grip was firm, confident. "Doctor?" "Behavioral analyst," he said with a smile. "Bianca and I met through a mutual friend. I've been helping her through this difficult time." I looked at Bianca. She was smiling at him like he'd just saved her life. "Julian's staying for dinner. I made pasta, your favorite." She hadn't cooked for me in over a year. I sat at the table because I didn't know what else to do. Bianca served the food, laughing and talking to him like I wasn't even there. He asked her about her day.
She told him about her Pilates class, her shopping trip, how exhausting everything had been. Then he turned to me. "So, Darius, Bianca tells me you're quite the workaholic." I looked up. "I work hard, yeah. That must be difficult for the family, especially for Amara. Children need their fathers present, not just financially, but emotionally." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Bianca jumped in. "Oh, Darius has always been married to his business. Haven't you, honey?" Her tone was light, but the words cut deep. I set my fork down carefully. "I work to provide for this family." "Of course," Dr. Julian said, nodding like he understood. "But sometimes providing isn't enough. Sometimes presence matters more than money. Don't you think?" I stared at him. He stared back, smiling. I wanted to tell him to get out of my house. I wanted to ask Bianca why the hell she'd brought a stranger into our home while we were in the middle of a divorce. But I didn't, because I knew that's what they wanted. So I smiled. I nodded, and I ate my food in silence. After dinner, I went back upstairs. I locked myself in my study and sat in the dark, my hands shaking with rage. There was a soft knock on the door. "Daddy?" I opened it. Amara stood there, in her pajamas, holding her stuffed rabbit. "Hey, baby, what are you doing up?" "I heard voices. Who was that man?" "Just a friend of Mommy's." She looked up at me, her little face so serious. "Daddy, are you sad?" My throat tightened. I kneeled down so we were eye level. "No, sweetheart, I'm okay." "You look sad." I pulled her into a hug, holding her tight. "I'm just tired, but I'm okay, I promise." She wrapped her arms around my neck. "I miss you, Daddy." "I miss you too, baby." She pulled back and looked at me. "Mommy says you're going away soon." My heart stopped. "What?" "She says you have to leave because you're not nice anymore." I felt something crack inside me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to storm downstairs and tell Bianca to stop poisoning our daughter against me. But I didn't, because I knew that's what they wanted. So I kissed Amara's forehead and whispered, "I'm not going anywhere, I promise." After I put her to bed, I stood in the hallway, my fists clenched, trying to breathe. Downstairs, I could hear Bianca and Dr. Julian laughing. And I realized this wasn't just a divorce. It was a setup. The trial started on a cold Monday morning. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wooden benches, high ceilings, and a judge's bench that looked like it had been there for 100 years. I sat next to Elias at a table that wobbled when I put my hands on it. Across from us, Bianca sat with Attorney Varick. He looked exactly like I imagined. Expensive suit, slicked back hair, the kind of smile that made you feel like you were already losing. Bianca didn't look at me once. Judge Holloway entered, and we all stood. He was an older man, gray-haired, stern-faced. He sat down, adjusted his glasses, and looked at both sides. "This is a hearing to determine custody and asset division in the matter of Bianca versus Darius," he said. "Attorney Varick, you may call your first witness." Varick stood up smoothly, buttoning his jacket. "Thank you, Your Honor. The petitioner calls Dr. Julian Reichman to the stand." I looked up, and my blood went cold. The man walking to the witness stand was the same man who'd sat at my dinner table 2 weeks ago. The same man who'd drunk my wine and asked me about being a workaholic. Dr. Julian. He was sworn in, sitting calmly with his hands folded like he'd done this 100 times. I leaned toward Elias and whispered, "That's him. That's the man from my house." Elias's face went hard. "What?" "He came over for dinner. Bianca introduced him as a friend." Elias stared at the stand, his jaw tight.
Then he muttered, "We've been played." Varick started his questioning, his voice smooth and confident. "Dr. Reichman, can you please state your credentials for the court?" Dr. Julian smiled politely. "Of course. I hold a doctorate in behavioral psychology from the European Institute of Advanced Studies. I've been a forensic behavioral analyst for 12 years and have testified as an expert witness in 47 custody cases across 3 states. The judge nodded, writing something down. Varick continued, "And in this case, did you have the opportunity to observe the defendant?" "I did." "Can you describe your findings?" Dr. Julian shifted in his seat, his tone professional and clinical. "The subject exhibits what we call covert narcissism. On the surface, he appears humble, hard-working, even self-sacrificing. But underneath, there's a need for control. He uses his financial contributions as leverage to maintain dominance in the household." I felt my chest tighten. "He also displays signs of intermittent explosive disorder, sudden bursts of anger when things don't go his way. This is often masked by long periods of silence, which creates a volatile and unpredictable environment for the family." Varick nodded, like he just heard the most reasonable thing in the world. "And in your professional opinion, doctor, is the defendant a danger to the child?" Dr. Julian paused, like he was considering it carefully. Then he looked directly at the judge. "I believe the child is at significant emotional risk in his care. The subject's need for control, combined with his suppressed rage, creates an environment where the child cannot feel safe or secure." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to scream that this man was a liar, that he'd been in my house, eating my food, pretending to be Bianca's friend while he was preparing to destroy me. But I couldn't. Elias put a hand on my arm, holding me down. Varick smiled. "Thank you, doctor. No further questions." Judge Holloway looked at Elias. "Cross-examination?" Elias stood up slowly. He looked at Dr. Julian for a long moment, then asked, "Dr. Reichman, when exactly did you observe my client?" Dr. Julian didn't hesitate. "Over the course of several weeks. I was invited to the home by Mrs. Bianca to assess the family dynamic." "And during these visits, did you disclose to Mr. Darius that you were evaluating him?" Dr. Julian paused just for a second. "It wasn't necessary. Observational analysis doesn't require disclosure." "So you came into his home under false pretenses?" "I came as a guest of his wife." "A guest who just happened to be building a psychological profile to use against him in court?" Varick stood up. "Objection. Argumentative." "Sustained," the judge said. Elias sat down, his face like stone. Dr. Julian stepped down from the stand, walking past our cable without a glance. I watched him sit next to Bianca, and for just a second I saw it. She reached over and squeezed his hand. It was quick, subtle, but I saw it. Elias saw it too. He leaned over and whispered, "They're not just working together, Darius. They're together." I felt sick. This wasn't just a custody battle. It was a conspiracy.
The next day, Elias called me to the stand. I walked up slowly, my legs shaking. The bailiff swore me in, and I sat down. The chair felt too small, too exposed. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. Elias asked me basic questions first. My name, my business, how long I'd been married. I answered each one carefully, trying to sound calm. Then he asked, "Do you love your daughter?" "More than anything," I said, my voice cracking. "And have you ever hurt her or your wife?" "Never." Elias nodded. No further questions. I started to stand up, relieved it was over. "Mr. Darius," Varick's voice cut through the room, "please stay seated. I have a few questions." My stomach dropped. Varric stood up slowly, buttoning his jacket like he was preparing for a performance. He walked toward me, hands in his pockets, casual, like we were just having a conversation. "Mr. Darius, you testified that you love your daughter. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And yet you worked late most nights, sometimes past midnight. Isn't that true?" "I was building a business to provide for. Just yes or no, please." I clenched my jaw. "Yes." "And during those late nights, who was taking care of Amara?" "Bianca." "So your wife raised your daughter while you focused on your hard work." He used air quotes, mocking me. "I was supporting my family." "Supporting them financially," Varric said, pacing now, "but not emotionally, not with your presence. Isn't that right?" "That's not fair." "Mr. Darius, would you say you're an angry man?" I blanked. "What?" "It's a simple question. Are you an angry man?" "No." "Really?" He stopped pacing and turned to face me. "Because we have audio of you screaming. We have testimony from Dr. Reichman about your rage. We have your wife, terrified, showing bruises." He stepped closer. "And you're telling this court you're not angry?" "I'm not." "You're not angry right now, even a little?" "I'm frustrated, yes, but—" "Frustrated," he smiled. "That's a polite word for it. What about when your wife spent money you didn't approve of? Were you just frustrated then?" "I never controlled her spending." "You monitored her credit card statements, didn't you?" "For budgeting purposes. You required her to ask permission for purchases over $500. That was so we could manage cash flow. You controlled the money. You controlled her access. You controlled everything." His voice was rising now, louder, sharper. "And when she tried to have a voice, when she tried to make her own decisions, you shut her down, didn't you?" "No! You yelled at her." "I never yelled at her." "Then who were you yelling at in that recording, Mr. Darius? Who were you screaming at?" "A contractor. I was on the phone with a contractor who cost me a client." Varric stopped. He tilted his head, like he was confused. "A contractor?" "Yes. And you think screaming at people is acceptable behavior?" "I was angry about losing a client, so you admit you have anger issues." "No, I was frustrated in that one moment." "And how many other moments like that did your wife have to endure? How many times did she have to walk on eggshells, afraid you'd explode?" "I never exploded." "You're raising your voice right now, Mr. Darius." I realized I was. My hands were gripping the arms of the chair. My heart was pounding. "I'm raising my voice," I said, trying to steady myself, "because you're twisting everything I say. Did you or did you not work 60, 70 hours a week while your wife stayed home alone?" "Yes, but—" "Did you or did you not monitor her spending? For budgeting, did you or did you not yell when things didn't go your way? Once, one time on a phone call." "So you admit to yelling." "Not at her, not at my family." "Then who, Mr. Darius, who were you yelling at? Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you were yelling at anyone who didn't do exactly what you wanted." "That's not true." "Isn't it? You wanted your wife to stay home. You wanted her to spend less. You wanted her to be grateful for the scraps you gave her while you built your empire." "I did it for this family." I slammed my hand on the armrest, my voice breaking. "Everything I did, every late night, every sacrifice, I did it for them." The courtroom went silent. Varric stepped back, a slow smile spreading across his face. "No further questions, Your Honor." He turned to the judge. "The violence speaks for itself." I sat there, shaking, my chest heaving. The gallery was whispering. I looked at the seats where Amara should have been sitting, but they were empty. The social worker had kept her home, saying the trial was too traumatic. I looked at the judge. He was writing something down, his face unreadable. And I knew. I'd lost. 2 days later, we were back in the courtroom for sentencing. I sat next to Elias, staring at the table. I hadn't slept, I hadn't eaten, I just kept replaying the moment I lost my temper on the stand, knowing it was exactly what they wanted. Bianca sat across from me, looking perfect as always. Varick whispered something to her, and she nodded, smiling slightly. Judge Holloway entered, and we all stood. He sat down, adjusted his glasses, and opened a folder. My life was in that folder. Every mistake, every twisted truth, every lie they'd told about me. "I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony in this case," he began. His voice was steady, formal. "And I must say, this has been one of the most troubling cases I've seen in my years on the bench." My hands were shaking. "The evidence presented by the petitioner, photographs, audio recordings, and expert testimony paints a picture of a man who, despite his financial contributions, created an environment of control and fear." I closed my eyes. This was it. "Mr. Darius, I find that you—" "Your Honor?" The voice was small, quiet, but it cut through the room like a knife. I turned around. Amara was standing at the back of the courtroom. She was wearing her school uniform, her hair messy, clutching her old cracked tablet in both hands. Her eyes were wide and terrified, but she didn't run. The judge frowned. "Young lady, this is a closed hearing. Please," Amara whispered. Her voice was shaking. "Can I show you something? Something Daddy doesn't know about?" The room went completely silent. Judge Holloway looked at Bianca, then at me, then back at Amara. "Approach." Amara walked down the aisle slowly, her little shoes echoing on the floor. When she reached the front, she looked up at the judge. "I recorded something on my tablet. I think you need to see it." The judge hesitated, then nodded. "Bailiff, assist her." The bailiff helped Amara connect the tablet to the courtroom screen. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely plug in the cable. I didn't know what she had. I didn't know what was happening. But when the video started playing, I heard Bianca gasp. The screen showed our living room. The angle was low, like the tablet had been propped up on the coffee table. The timestamp was from 3 weeks ago. Bianca walked into frame, laughing, holding a glass of wine. Dr. Julian followed behind her, carrying a bottle. My bottle, the vintage whiskey I'd been saving for Amara's graduation. He poured himself a glass, then topped off Bianca's wine. "This is easier than I thought. That idiot Darius has no idea." Dr. Julian laughed. "He's too busy working to notice anything. Classic workaholic blind spot." Bianca took a sip of wine. "Once the judge signs off, we take everything. The house, the business, the accounts. Then we're on a plane to Italy." "What about the kid?" Bianca shrugged. "We'll deal with her. She's attached to him, but kids are adaptable." The courtroom was frozen. On screen, Dr. Julian swirled his whiskey. "My testimony should bury him. Narcissistic rage is the easiest thing to fake. You just provoke them until they snap, then point to it as proof." Bianca laughed, throwing her head back. "You're a genius." "I know." He leaned over and kissed her. The video kept playing. They talked about transferring money, about selling the business, about how I'd never see it coming. I couldn't breathe. Judge Holloway was staring at the screen, his face pale. Varick was frozen in his seat. And Bianca? Bianca was standing up, her face white as paper. "That's fake! It's AI! It's—" She lunged toward Amara, reaching for the tablet. "Stop her," the judge shouted. The bailiff grabbed Bianca before she could reach our daughter. She fought against him, screaming, "It's fake! He made her do this! He coached her!" "Mrs. Bianca, sit down," Judge Holloway's voice was like thunder. She kept screaming, thrashing. Another bailiff had to help restrain her. Dr. Julian stood up, his face frozen in panic. He started backing toward the door. "Bailiff, secure that man," the judge ordered. Dr. Julian tried to run, but the third bailiff blocked the exit. They grabbed him, forcing his hands behind his back. The video finally ended. The courtroom was silent, except for Bianca's sobbing. Judge Holloway looked at the screen, then at Bianca, then at me. His face was hard as stone. "Bailiff, lock the doors. No one leaves this courtroom." He turned to Bianca and Dr. Julian, his voice shaking with rage. "In 30 years on this bench, I have never seen such calculated, disgusting cruelty." He stood up. Bianca was still crying, but now she looked terrified. He pointed at her. "I am dismissing this petition in its entirety. Full custody of the minor child is granted to Mr. Darius, effective immediately." He turned to the bailiffs. "Place Mrs. Bianca and Dr. Julian Reichman under arrest for perjury, fraud, conspiracy, and grand larceny." Varick stood up. "Your Honor, I had no knowledge." "Sit down, Mr. Varick. You'll be hearing from the State Bar." They handcuffed Bianca. She was sobbing, begging, saying it wasn't her idea. They handcuffed Dr. Julian. He didn't say a word. I just sat there, unable to move. And then I felt a small hand slip into mine. Amara. I pulled her into my arms and held her tight, tears streaming down my face. "I knew you weren't bad, Daddy," she whispered. I couldn't speak. I just held her and cried. The bailiffs dragged Bianca toward the door. She was still screaming, her perfect makeup ruined by tears. "This is a mistake! He manipulated her! He coached that child!" Judge Holloway slammed his gavel down so hard it echoed through the courtroom. "Enough!" His voice was like steel. "I have sat on this bench for 30 years. I have seen liars. I have seen manipulators. But I have never seen such calculated, cold-blooded cruelty as what you have done here today." Bianca stopped struggling, her face pale. The judge stood up, leaning forward over his bench, his eyes burning. "You didn't just lie to this court, Mrs. Bianca. You weaponized it. You took a system designed to protect families and turned it into a tool of destruction. You fabricated evidence. You manipulated testimony. You used your own daughter as a pawn." His voice shook with rage. "You are a disgrace." Bianca tried to speak, but no words came out. Judge Holloway turned to Dr. Julian, who stood frozen between two bailiffs. "And you, Dr. Reichman, if that's even your real name, you stood in my courtroom and lied under oath. You provided false expert testimony to destroy an innocent man's life. You are not a doctor. You are a fraud." Dr. Julian looked at the floor, saying nothing. The judge turned to Varick, who was still sitting at his table, his face white. "Mr. Varick, I will be referring your conduct to the State Bar for immediate investigation. If you knew about this conspiracy, you will be disbarred. If you didn't know, then you are incompetent. Either way, you are done in my courtroom." Varick opened his mouth, then closed it. He gathered his papers quickly and left without a word. Judge Holloway sat back down, his face still hard as stone. "The petition for divorce is dismissed with prejudice. Full custody of Amara is granted to Mr. Darius. All assets frozen during these proceedings are to be returned to him immediately." He looked at the bailiffs. "Take them away." Bianca screamed one more time as they pulled her through the door. "You'll regret this, all of you." The door closed behind her, and then the courtroom was silent. I sat there, still holding Amara, unable to believe it was over. Elias put a hand on my shoulder. "It's done, Darius. You're free." I looked at him, tears streaming down my face. "Thank you." He smiled, his eyes tired but warm. "You did it. You and your daughter." I looked down at Amara. She was looking up at me, her little face serious. "Can we go home now, Daddy?" "Yeah, baby, we can go home." 3 weeks later, I sat across from Amara at a small diner booth. We'd moved out of the old house. I couldn't stay there anymore, not after everything that had happened. We found a small apartment across town. It wasn't much, but it was ours, and it was quiet. Amara was eating pancakes, the same ones I used to make her every morning. She had syrup on her chin and a smile on her face. I watched her, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. "Daddy?" she said, looking up at me. "Yeah, baby? Are we safe now?" The question broke my heart. She was 7 years old. She shouldn't have to ask if she was safe. But she did, because of what Bianca put her through, what she put both of us through. I reached across the table and took her little hand in mine. "Yes, baby," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "We're safe." She smiled, then went back to her pancakes. I watched her eat, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself breathe. The accounts had been unfrozen. The business was mine again. Bianca and Dr. Julian were facing charges that would put them away for years. Varick had been disbarred, his career destroyed. Justice had been served. But more than that, I had my daughter back. Amara looked up at me, syrup dripping from her fork. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "Can we get a dog?" I laughed, actually laughed. It felt strange, like I'd forgotten how. "Maybe," I said. "We'll see." She grinned and went back to eating. I watched her eat and leaned back in the booth, thinking about everything we'd been through. The lies, the betrayal, the fear. But we made it. We survived. And now, for the first time in a long time, I could see the future again. Not just a future where I was working myself to death, hoping someone would love me for it, but a real future. One where I was present, where I was a father, not just a provider. Amara finished her pancakes and slid out of the booth. "Daddy, come on, Daddy, let's go to the park." I stood up, left some cash on the table, and took her hand. We walked out of the diner together into the sunlight, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe again. We were safe, we were free, and we were going to be okay. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another one. Drop a comment below and let me know, what would you have done in Darius's situation? And where are you watching from? I love hearing from you all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.